let's move into those picks and bans. Game number 1 for the big matchup here in console. HypeUnit up against Heat Uprising. And what's really critical is that if HypeUnit can get this win, then they're right back to where they want to be, where they're tied for that first place position with Heat Uprising. Because they had a DQ earlier on in this split where they unfortunately couldn't get enough players, they slipped through their alarms, then that's hurt them. If they can grab this win, that puts them right back where I know they expect to be.
And I think that they're expecting to find a win here. It's Day up against Heat Uprising with the first pick selection. Already an interesting idea with a throwaway ban of the Artio, something that Delny has been running quite consistently.
But Xbalanque, Merlin, Achilles has all been let through because Jormungandr and Odin were both banned out. So there's a ton of high priority picks up, and because HypeUnit can only take 1, that means you can take Merlin, Achilles here on the response. That's very good.
That's one of the puzzle pieces.
Well, go ahead. Yeah,
do they go for the second one? They do.
Of course they do.
Of course they do.
That's a very good first 2 picks, totally. So as good as Xbalanque is, I don't know if he quite matches up the value from the Achilles Merlin. And I like this idea from Heat Uprising. Instead of being the second pick sort of relegated to banning all this top stuff, leave enough of it open to where you can kind of come back on the backswing and grab 2, especially if HypeUnit are going to ban King Arthur themselves.
Yes, but HypeUnit are expected to kind of go for this option of letting the Achilles go through because of the flexibility from Wolves, right? Like, he'll play the Sun Wukong from time to time. He'll play the Odins, the Lokis. You never really know what direction he's going to go. So the Sun Wukong, a great look. But with the Bellona as well, not sure if that's going to go for inbound or where exactly that Bellona is going.
That's right. There is some flex potential between them. Exactly like we said, Wolves and inbound could both play either one to great effect, so it's hard to know where it'll go. Heat Uprising, on the other hand, looks much more in stone, right? I imagine they'll be giving that Achilles over to Delny, Jingwei for Fatal Ghost, to Merlin in the mid for Crimson. They've got a strong early draft that's also good at multiple stages. You know, Achilles could do well early if they want. Jingwei could do well late. This team's good all over the place.
I really like it, honestly. They're, like you were talking about, it's at every single stage. Naja, great in the early, great in the mid game, kind of falls off in the late game if you're not too careful, especially if you're going to go run it in that support position. But with Yangaru for the jungle out of Heat Uprising, I'm expecting him to be piloting the Naja today.
Wow, that's a ton that they put on Zeus. That's a big old banner, a neon sign they put on top of Baranic's head because it's 3 warriors, 4 physical damage. That means that the Baranic's not perfect. They can't win this game, not with the way they've drafted. They need Baranic to hit a ton of damage every fight, even if he dies. They put a target on his back.
A lot of confidence for not only HypeUnit, but Baranic to lock in the Zeus into a Naja, somebody that's going to be taking you out of the fight if you're not in time with your purification bead to prevent any sort of detonate follow-up.
Man, what more could you have expected from these two teams? Even just in the picks and bans, their cards are kind of face up on the table, it feels like. It's all on Baranic for me, man. How well he does is how well this game goes. Either way, though, let's move into game number 1. HypeUnit up against Heat Uprise and Aggro. I know you're excited about the Zeus.
Always, man. I'm always excited to see some Zeus gameplay, but particularly Baranic Zeus versus Crimson's Merlin. This is going to be a really fun game to watch as a mid laner, joined here by Taco on the cast. And Taco, this is a critical game because HypeUnit, if they win this set, can come back up and tie Heat Uprising at first place.
And that's what it's really all about, is giving that contention spot, period, because both of these teams, I think there's a fair share of pride on the line here when you think about some of the players that are involved. Wolves and Delany, I think that this is a solo lane matchup that's as old as, console at this point.
Definitely 2 that are very familiar with one another. There's no doubt about that. But how familiar is this triple warrior setup that HypeUnit has? 4 physicals, 3 of which are warriors. Do you think this is going to hurt them in any way, or are you okay with this comp?
It's a bold strategy, Cotton, and we'll have to see how it pans out for them.
You have to see how it pans out on this blue buff invade as Jangaru is making the rotation over. There's a 2v3 now in Heat Uprise's favor. Inbound immediately killed by the ring bounce alone. Stun into ring bounce. Doesn't matter what class you are, if you get ring bounce between 2 people at level 1, you are probably dead.
Even with the sprint, but to be fair, Wolves was a little bit late in toggling that sprint, but even if he had been on time with it, I have no doubts in my mind that Heat Uprising would have chosen to just continue chasing inbound anyway. It just felt very aggressive from HypeUnit, and Edgar, you're asking me about this triple warrior frontline for HypeUnit and what I think of it. And I joked a little bit at first, but honestly, man, after seeing that first blood go down, I do have a lot of concerns now. Inbound's going to come back to the solo lane level 1, but the last thing you want is for your warrior to die.
Specifically warrior support, I think, is when it's at its worst, because that's the one that's going to be getting the least amount of farm consistently in the game, and so it's hard for them to heap up those base stats. Warriors are all about the jack of all trades, master of none sort of mentality. They can kind of do it all, but don't do it better than anybody else at any given time necessarily, except when they get really far ahead. That's when warriors feel at their best. And I just don't know that Inbound will ever get to that point now after taking that first blood spill.
Great knock-up interrupt, though, off of the pin there from Inbound. So, while it hasn't led to any kills, so to say, it still shows that he's at least got his mechanics awake and ready to rumble. But I think that you're right as far as the farm is concerned. Inbound's definitely going to have a fair share of struggles. In fact, I'm actually surprised to see him still staying in this solo lane as long as Inbound has. I feel like he could have rotated out by now and gone to soak elsewhere.
I agree, especially when it's Wolves in the solo lane. I mean, you want this dude to get ahead. But here's the problem. When your team is talented as HypeUnit, you want all of them to get ahead. Baran can carry games. Griff can carry games. Wolves can carry games. So there's not really a spot where Inbound can go, oh, well, it's not as big of a deal if I take farm here. They kind of all need it. Big bludgeon coming in from Wolves. Inbound still pretty low, however. So I do want to highlight Baranic's early game choices. No blessing, no nothing. Just goes straight into the the boots, the cooldown boots right away. I feel like this starts really good when you're planning on invading or you think you might get invaded because it's the most power you can have in those moments. But in games like this where they seem pretty content to farm up, I don't know how much I like this.
I think that invades might have been the mentality for a triple warrior frontline, but after Inbound gave up first blood, it kind of shuts all of that down. That thought process just can't really come to fruition if Inbound's going to automatically be placed behind.
Still a bit behind, even after trying to invade the enemy blue buff, was unsuccessful. Down he gets that for himself. HypeUnit now taking the lead in totems taken so far this game, 2-1. But this third warrior that we really haven't seen him much on screen yet is this Sun Wukong in the jungle, 4 layers. If you're going to go triple warrior, I don't know how I feel about this exact makeup of it, as Wolves already in a ton of trouble. Beautiful execute by Jungaru. 1 for him, 1 for Delny. The 2v2 in solo lane lost yet again by HypeUnit. Heat Uprise up 3-0.
Layers just hit level 5 with Baranic in the mid lane. Baranic level 6, of course, but the fact that Layers is not only trailing to Jungaru, because Jungaru's not wasting any of his time near the solo lane. He's just been rotating around freely, collecting camps, and honestly, I think I would rather have the jungle Achilles as opposed to the jungle Sun Wukong. This Wukong I liked a lot more before I realized that HypeUnit wanted to play the Zeus, because sure, it's awesome to have 3 warriors as your front line, but I don't think that there's going to be enough peel for Baranic when it really matters most.
Yeah, I mean, they might have enough peel, but even still, it's just clear speed in the jungle. That's why Jungaru's level ahead of Layers, is because he just does more damage to the camps more efficiently. Wukong just doesn't clear camps that well among a lot of warriors. Erlong and Bologna both clear camp better than Wukong, it feels like. I don't know. I just feel like the Erlong jungle Wukong support may have done a little bit more. Though, to be fair, Wukong when behind does a lot less than Erlong. It's just a... I don't know. You can understand my reservations. There's no reservation at all from Baranic as he finds great damage, but Hamster, all by his lonesome, finds the ultimate onto Baranic, but I don't know if that's exactly where he wants to be. Problem is, Inbound, only level 4. Doesn't matter. Layers has the lockdown and the damage from Baranic enough to put HypeUnit up on the board.
Little wiggle step from Inbound, gonna get him out of the danger range of that Windfire Wheels. And the last thing I am the Hamster probably want to take up into the air with him is a Zeus, because that just makes it all too easy for Baranic. Toss the shield right at his feet. Easiest chain lightning of his life probably into the detonate. I mean, it doesn't get much easier than that if you're the Zeus.
Baranic gets himself an assist, but certainly plenty of player damage. He forced back Jungaru and Crimson nearly on his lonesome, though Inbound was doing good work on the front line as well.
Inbound, I don't really think that was necessarily a bait, though, for Inbound. I think that was Inbound narrowly avoiding dying yet again. And sure, it might have worked out for him this time, but this Erlang already has 2 deaths, almost had a 3rd one within, what, like a 6-minute span? That's nearly a death for every 2 minutes. Inbound's got to be a little bit more careful, I think, on this Erlang, maybe overestimating how tanky he really is right now.
Now, we mentioned that HypeUnit has 4 physicals, but so does Heat Uprise. They have the Naja on the support role instead, so 2 warriors and an assassin is the lineup for Heat Uprise. Which of these teams do you think has the advantage against the other because they can stack the physical defense?
I think that I would have to give it to Heat Uprise only because of the Merlin. I think that as far as team wipe scenarios are concerned, if I had to take a bet on which team would be able to close out faster, Heat Uprising is going to win that because of the Merlin damage alone.
Got great objective damage and player damage for sure. Certainly has the prot shred, even if HypeUnit starts to build some of those protections. Taco, I'll say it right now. If we see a Heartward Amulet this game, you're solo casting. Because earlier today we saw 4 magical composition and a sovereignty was built against it. If we see it the other way around this time, I'm losing my gourd.
I'll be honest though, Aggro, I think that might have been exclusive to Matt Coyes.
Here's hoping.
Poor Coyes.
Poor nothing. He built it. I don't feel bad at all. All he had to do was not build it, and I wouldn't be mad.
Well, it's because, like, you know, when, like, I almost feel like a parent, right? Because it's like you're scolding your kids. And
Look,
you don't want to be disappointed, but
I
it's
love
like,
Matt. I do.
We just told you the stove was hot, and you're here throwing your entire hand on top of it anyway.
I love Matt. He's a good dude. Should learn to build Heartward Amulet and not Sovereignty against 4 magical. That's all I'm saying. Hamster taunted in. Lightning Storm right there behind it. Shell just barely good enough. No, cancel that. Layers has it with the Jingu Bang over the top. Good little magic cudgel gets the job done.
And see, here's something that we didn't factor in behind this Wukong pick. And I was going to pitch it to you, sounding like a prank, but in all honesty, having that long-range cudgel to clean up kills that might have escaped otherwise, I think that it's strong. I'm not sure that that was the intention here with this Wukong jungle pick, but I do think that there is a lot of dive potential that I wasn't necessarily factoring in before initially looking at this HypeUnit composition. Having seen it actually been performed and executed, though, I don't really have many complaints now with Layers on this Wukong. He's also got the Crusher. That's just going to further benefit him on trying to help confirm those cleanups. Without
a doubt. When it gets ahead, it can look very good. My point is that it's harder to get ahead on the Wukong in the jungle than it would be on most other characters. But if you can do it, then you set yourself up for a really good position, and that's what Layers has done thus far. Both of HypeUnit's kills have gone over to the Wukong in the jungle, now having a slight XP lead over Jungaru in the early stages. This must be a good time for you as a Hunter player, Taco, that no one's splitting your farm anymore.
Oh, it's a blessing. But also a little bit of a curse in disguise, because so many teams now do this right here, HypeUnit looking to just shred this Gold Fury, because no one spends time in duo anymore. It's unconventional, I think, now to try and gank this duo lane. Fatal Ghost, however, still wanting to give chase into HypeUnit, not trying to let them get that Gold Fury for free. Buffs are respawning, however, so Heat Uprise won't get nothing for their troubles, but 2 buffs in comparison to a full Gold Fury, I think HypeUnit still came out on top there.
Still losing 2 buffs, I don't know. That's a bit of a tougher position, I think. It's like it's those really hard scenarios. That's why MOBAs are really hard. That getting Gold Fury is obviously very good, but you have to time it to where maybe your buffs aren't coming up at that exact time. There's just a million different moving pieces.
Or you go to take the bus first, but if HypeUnit does that, then they risk losing that window of opportunity that we just saw, where the Lightning Storm from Zeus was enough damage to effectively bring down the Gold Fury by the time Heat Uprise starts to work their way in. Bobby's up in the air, though, and coming right back down into nothing. Crimson using the Ice Storm a little bit too soon.
And he switched stance and put down those Dragon Fires pretty early as well, but that was really Layers doing a good job zoning away Jungaru and Crimson simultaneously, and the ultimate from Griff, of course, which all dissuaded the all-in commit onto the support. That Darkest of Nights really does shut down engagements basically instantly.
but it won't stop Wolves from invading Heat Uprises. No, that's not even... No, the blue buff that he has, of course. Mortality Wolves' current blue buff was Delaney's.
Yes.
Delaney tries to counter-invade
Right.
as a result, and Wolves just says no. He just
Stuffs
confirms
it.
his own blue buff.
Yeah, just typical Wolf stuff, I suppose, who's, despite the early spill in that lane, is basically even if not a little bit ahead in net worth at this point.
I'm trying to understand how Wolves works, but I feel like this man just has like an extra damage passive to buffs.
I used to say that all the time.
I've never seen him lose a buff.
He just always does more damage than anyone else should. He crits me on Odin jumps. That's what I used to say. Whenever I'd get Odin bird bombed by Wolves, I'd say he crit me.
That actually makes sense, though.
That's the way it always felt, man.
The damage is stupid sometimes. It feels like a crit. It really does.
Especially when this man's doing it. Definitely a high-profile name in the console scene for a reason, but Delaney's certainly holding his own so far. Griff might be in a bit of trouble here as Jungaru wrapping around him. Good heads-up awareness by Griff to see it coming in time, but will it matter? Good juke. Still dead.
Unfortunately, taking that backstep means that you're backstepping right into the damage of Fatal Ghost instead. Fatal Ghost, though, not getting credited for that last hit. Instead, that is still going to go the way of Jangaru, but with this 4v5 power play, now's the time to continue going in mid. Crimson not going to be late this time around with the Fire Breath. However, Wolves' rotation in could be the one that actually leads to a kill.
Delaney trying to finish off layers, just can't quite do it. Wolves chase beads away from Crimson on the back end as both solo laners rotated in. Great work from Inbound there. He tries to taunt Hamster off of layers. As soon as that doesn't work because Hamster's already CC immune, he just makes a beeline straight for Crimson and makes sure that he can't safely cast that damage. But also an equally good job by Jungaru to get on Baran to do the same.
It's so crazy to me, though, how something as simple as a Darkest Night from Griff can cause a team fight to break out into 3 separate locations, because it started off, I think, near HypeUnit's T1 tower line, but at the same time, we see Wolves only going to the backline of Heat Uprising, and so the entire mid lane is just one chaotic cluster storm of these teams trying to levy advantages over each other.
Jungaru just a little bit off on that stun portion of Shield of Achilles. Still is able to chase out the ultimate from Griff. Jungaru doing plenty of damage. Here comes Layers with that blink in. That'll be it. Blinks and forces out the ultimate. So at least gets something in exchange for his relic. But without Somersault Cloud, just can't quite keep that chase going.
HypeUnit still seems like they're willing to aggress into Heat Uprising, though, but Inbound's got to live through it first. Up into the air one more time. And right back down on top of the Fire Breath Storm from Crimson, but thankfully enough for Inbound, he will live. And I couldn't tell. It looked like Crimson was actually a little bit off the mark with the placement.
Yeah, it was a little bit short there. Didn't know exactly where he was. I think Wolves in the middle of everybody. Everyone knows where he is. He doesn't even get the ultimate off because of a great CC chain from Heat Uprise, and that might be the perfect opportunity for this Gold Fury. Griff's here, but has no ultimate. Baronic, no ult and no purification bead, so no way he can walk in safely. Primal Fury goes down for Heat Uprise off a great pick onto Wolves.
Layers just isn't tanky enough to try and run in there first, and without anybody to frontline for Baronic, there's no chance that a Zeus is going to look to try and toss out his Lightning Storm. He'll die before he even gets a chance to move forward with the Chain Lightning. Didn't even have the Lightning Storm available then to try and contest against that Primal Fury. So just really well calculated from Heat Uprise. They're just taking the small advantages that they're creating for themselves by constantly forcing out Inbound or Layers.
Jungaru's had a great game for himself so far. 2-0 and 3. He's been a part of every kill so far for Heat Uprise. He's been putting consistent pressure on the duo lane as well. Really, the only Layers certainly has not done that so far this game. This Achilles has been looking very strong for Heat Uprise.
And on the opposite hand of that, I don't think that this Erlong support has worked out super well for HypeUnit. I just think that now Inbound is in a position where still struggling to try and hit level 12, even just hoping to get his second relic online. But the turtle forms have been far and few in between. And I am the hamster trying to do his best to escape right now. Windfire Wheel's going to buy him a little bit of time, but Layers still unable to close it out until the Darkest Night assistance. And realistically, nowhere left for I am the hamster to run once he got trapped inside that Fire Giant pit.
Still takes a lot to take him down at this point. Lots of HP for between the Blackthorn Hammer and the Gauntlet of Thebes. Griff uses the ultimate where it looks like it might be a waste, but he's going for Rage. So getting that ever-important Rage stack by getting that assist from the Global Ultimate, it's certainly worth his time.
God, I feel like every time we look over at this duel lane, though, it's Jangaru just constantly showing face to keep Griff pinned underneath his T1 tower. And now the rest of HypeUnit's hoping to try and follow him up as they started pushing upwards in that duel lane. But you just can't afford to continue chasing against Heat Uprise.
Good amount of mobility for their squad, for sure. Layers in trouble here in the mid lane. He takes a bunch of damage from Crimson before he has to back it up. That's the Merlin output. Now Downey with the rotation in, nearly caught Layers, but at the very least gets his ultimate away from him, and that's quite a bit of the survivability that Layers has available to him. Great rotation in from Downey.
The other problem too, though, is now Heat Uprise with their solo laner in tow. They're just going to look to siege this first T1 tower in mid. Lightning Storm has come out. T1 tower is still standing and putting out decent damage against Downey, but it's Jangaru who finds Baran first. Double kill onto Layers, and Griff finally shutting down this Achilles.
Another good ultimate from Hamster directly onto Griff. Fatal Ghost able to finish that off with the nice airstrike. And now Tier 2 is nice and free for Heat Uprise after getting 3 kills in the mid lane. That engagement from HypeUnit, just not a good one. I think that's a moment where you just have to give up. It feels bad, but you just have to give up that tower.
And I understand HypeUnit wanting this triple warrior frontline because, again, aggro. If they'd actually been the ones to confirm the first blood and it had not been Inbound who dies first, I think that's reasonable. But Wolves, just look at that Merlin shred. It's just so disgusting.
Absurd damage coming from the Merlin. Wolves does his job, though. He gets Heat Uprise off Fire Giant. Inbound continuing to chase for at least a little bit longer, but hasn't gotten back to base since hitting level 12. Maybe a little pin over the wall. Doesn't catch Hamster. Unfortunate for Inbound. But man, the Merlin damage on the tanks and Fire Stance is just nuts. And the build that Crimson has is built to kill these frontliners. And I think that's the perfect call from him. It's good self-peel with his Gem of Isolation. You lock them down a little bit longer. And the chances are, I mean, they have 3 warriors. They're going to be on top of you. Build for who you're going to hit. Even
rushing the Obsidian Shard straight after the Gem of Isolation. Could have looked for a Chronos Pendant or cooldowns of some sort. Just doesn't even want to bother. Rather just have as much pen as possible. And I cannot blame him in the slightest. I think that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And this build is very clearly working for Crimson.
Absolutely. Love the way he's built so far. I've got no problem with Baran's build on the other side. The Winged Blade gives him a lot more survivability against a team that has a decent amount of slows. Gives him some cheap HP, some movement speed. And the Divine Ruin, pretty necessary if you're ever trying to kill Downey.
But Baran's damage output has definitely taken a hit as a direct result of him trying to build a little bit more self-peel oriented. And like you just said, I love the idea of the Divine Ruin. I think that it's very necessary, especially when trying to deal with the Vamana and Achilles. Even the Najah gives enough argument for the item. But when you only have that Book of Thoth to rely on for sheer power and not really any true pen just yet to deal with Heat Uprising's own front line, I think that's part of the reason why HypeUnit just continues to struggle throughout these engagements to the point now where they're pretty much expending their ultimates defensively.
Layers blinks in as Griff uses the ultimate simultaneously. Burn damage onto Inbound. That'll actually force his ult as a defensive measure. Layers does the same as Wolves going in, but Downey is taking care of Griff and Baran all by himself on that backside.
Well, Griff actually taking care of himself on Downey, attacking into this Vamana while he has those Thorns proc. Griff's already done half of his health alone. Wolves now trying to do what he can against Crimson, but he can't dive this Merlin alone. Jangaru going to be able to pick up Wolves through the Fatal Strike instead.
Some rare mispositioning, I'd say, from Wolves so far this set. That's not the first time that he's been really isolated with relative ease by Heat Uprise. 0-4 for Wolves, still done the most damage on his team, but that fight in particular is a good example of you can get a lot of damage off, but if you die, you leave open such a big window for the other team.
I think it's also just that Wolves isn't far enough ahead for him to do what he traditionally does. And that's...
Sure.
We see Wolves all the time looking to 1v4, 1v3, 1v5 even. But normally, he's the one who's level 19, and his opposition is 17. But with everybody on HypeUnit behind, Heat Uprising looking to continue surging down this left side lane. Griff gonna barely survive off the initial windfire and wheels damage, but he can't live through this Achilles.
Just great rotation in. Griff dies, or gets Naja ulted with his beads up. Just didn't respect that ultimate from Hamster. Hamster, by the way, I think has had a great game on this Naja. Lots of ultimates on the great targets. Hasn't always used the sash to lead in either, just some blank ults going out there. He's been playing very well so far.
Also, had it not been for Hamster, that initial kill at the inbound wouldn't have been possible either. So
true.
Hamster definitely making sure that his presence is felt, and something as simple as an Aja rain bounce, sometimes that's all it takes to completely shut down what would have otherwise been, I think, a fairly potent strategy from HypeUnit. It's just because of that small delay into inbound where he's stuck over in solo lane a little bit longer than intended, I think, that Heat Uprising are now able to just take the map for free. These objectives just don't last in front of Crimson.
HypeUnit may have known that Fire Giant was going on, but it didn't matter. 5 members of Heat Uprise. They are up 10,000 gold here at 23 minutes. They've looked very, very clean so far this game. And it's not the usual suspects, I would say. I mean, Crimson's had a great game on the Merlin, sure, and that's to be expected. But Jungaru, Hamster, these are the dudes that have less established names in the scene, and they've had great games today.
Now looking to make sure everybody remembers who they are. And hey, if they keep having performances like this, Aggro, it won't take very long at all. I Am the Hamster has definitely had so many wonderful Ninja ultimates that have just set up Heat Uprising for so much success. And Jingaru now, spot of trouble, but when the only thing left to chase you is a Sun Wukong in Tiger form, you don't care.
Easy to get away from that one. And you got 2 ultimates from that in exchange for your own. Add in the 20% CDR that Jingaru has in comparison to the 10% that Baran has. Feeling pretty good.
And I do think that this goes both ways, because while Heat Uprising are definitely having Jingaru and I Am the Hamster and sorts kind of rise to the occasion, I definitely also feel as though this is not HypeUnit's best.
No, they've had... I'm not in love with this composition. I think it could have worked, but I'm not in love with it. I just don't think Wukong Jungle does a lot, to be honest with you, and the player damage numbers are backing up that opinion so far.
Wukong Jungle doesn't really do a whole lot, and on top of that, when your team is behind, it does even less. Inbound now, trying to play whatever defensiveness he can, but Baranic's already been forced out of his Purification beats. He's all the way in the backside of that Phoenix, meanwhile Layers just gets gobbled up on the front side, and it's Crimson all over again with this Merlin.
Just didn't even have time to get the ultimate off. That channel time for Somersault Cloud isn't short, but you can move during it. Just goes to show how much damage Crimson's is outputting in every single one of these engagements, specifically towards these warriors. So he slows down inbound, opening up the way for Heat Uprise. Ultimate from Griff. Isolates Jungaru, who's alone now in between the Phoenixes. He's hunting Baranic, who has no Purification, being stunned. Lands, but a good Aegis from Baranic. Great damage, though, coming from Jungaru. Fatal Strike off the mark. He wraps around that fountain. And he's playing a bit of ring around the rosy here with Jungaru. His inbound actually blinks past as well. But all that time bought by Jungaru opens up that left side Phoenix. Wolves falls in the face of everybody else from Heat Uprise. And the left side Phoenix broke it in.
And you just have to remember, Griff and Baranic, they're so busy getting harassed by this Achilles that deep into their fountain room that neither of them can even afford to play defense on the left side Phoenix. It was really kind of free for Heat Uprising to just continue pushing forward.
Now looking for another instance here in the mid lane. Grouped as 5 once again. Sash onto Griff. Ultimate's ready for Hamster, but he doesn't need it to take down inbound. Fatal Ghost has that under wraps. Layers now has to use his ultimate. This time he does get it off, but it's still not enough to save that mid Phoenix. Heat Uprise now have 2 out of 3 Phoenixes down.
Thought that maybe Heat Uprise might even look to just try and close out. Wolves was respawning, but it would have been a 4v5 situation. And Heat Uprise still had that Fire Giant for a couple moments longer, although it is due to wear off pretty shortly. And just in case they needed any more assistance or help burning that next fire giant, well, Primal Fury is certainly going to help out with that, but with the amount of damage Crimson's been doing all game long, aggro, I'm not even sure that Primal Fury is going to be necessary.
He's been crushing people all game, and that's what Merlin really does. He's a great tank killer. Kills squishies too, most mages do, but I think Merlin's identity should, as it continues to evolve as its first few weeks of competitive availability, in my mind, he really has become an objective burner and a tank burner. That's what he does better than most other mages.
And the Titan Destroyer.
Yeah.
No one kills Titans faster than Merlin. No one.
Fire stance is a hell of a drug, Taco. It does a lot. No matter what objective you are, if and God forbid you're a player who gets locked in that, you don't have a dream. We talked about the builds for the different mid laners. And here's the problem I think with Baranic's build is that it's obviously exaggerated now that he's very far behind. But with how much health Hamster was building from minute 1 with the Blackthorn Hammer rush and the Blackthorn Hammer for Delny as well, there's just a lot of HP, and you really want Soul Reaver badly. But now you're delaying it. You have to get either Soul Reaver or Obsidian Shard in your 6th item slot, and that's so late into the game. The defensive option in the Wingblade, I think it makes a lot of sense, but at the same time, I don't know, you might just want to accept that you're dying and go for the damage.
And that's the other full discussion is inbound. Well, we'll see you later. That's about all to... I mean, he dies before we even have a chance to pan back over to the screen. That is how fast this Merlin shred is taking place. That even with Doug, the greatest cameraman in existence for Smite.
Retweet.
You know? He can't even make it back over there in time. Crimson's just killing everybody too fast.
Top of the player damage charts by a significant margin. Nearly 33% more than his next closest opponent.
I remember what I was going to say now, by the way.
Oh yeah, go for it.
So, Baronic and the Wingblade, I think that I like the Wingblade option still, even in this position from being super far behind. But I also think that he needs somebody else from his team to buy him a little bit more time to actually participate in the engagement. Someone has to lock out Jengaru, and the problem is I just don't think HypeUnit has anybody to fulfill that role.
I think it's got to be Layers, right? Who just pokes him.
He won't
with
win
the
that.
one. I mean, he won't win that, but at least put him in combat. So you can't blink on top of Baronic is the big thing. You're just looking for easy damage that can put someone in combat. Is Inbound going to blink in onto Crimson? I believe that's Layers right behind him. Indeed it is, but he's got to use the ultimate right away. Taunt straight into that Somersault Cloud damage, and Layers does take care of Crimson, but Jengaru going to answer back onto Inbound with that Fatal Strike, as it's actually a Titan rush by Heat Uprise. It was all a bait, but Baronic puts down Fatal Ghost before he can get up into the air. Delny doing what he can alongside Hamster, but I don't know if it's going to be enough. Titan's so low that AoE auto does it for Hamster, and Heat Uprise close it out with the lone support ending the game.